What
It
is
is
your
member
on?
speaking, yeah.
Stop. What is your point of time? Do I tell you no?
I think so, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're good. No worries.
Go ahead.
Okay. As we are all aware, the debate today is on the matter of the Common Core. Our side is interested in properly arguing that the Common Core is a useful program for the overall benefit of our nation's most valuable natural resource, that of course being our children. Now the other side is interested in arguing that it's not useful or beneficial for America's youth and that it actually acts as a hindrance to their development. However, I would caution the judges that that is by no means all of the opposing side is interested in doing. They aim to paint us as totalitarians, and they will deviate from the point at hand in order to vilify us. The opposition will denounce reasonable uses of taxpayer dollars for their intended purpose, the betterment of the education of our nation's youth, as a Nazi-style effort for manipulation of children. They will claim the Common Core is a product of the opulence of an ostentatious government which wishes its citizens ill. The con side will attempt to manipulate you. Through ornately constructed points and rebuttals, they will do their very best to bring you onto the side of paranoia and naivete. They are not the defenders of individualism. They are the champions of fear and the guardians of stagnation. Theirs is the losing side of history, Theirs is the losing side of history, but they probably would lose things too. The side of xenophobia, isolationism, and reaction. Ours is the side of progress and adaptation. I would ask the judges whether they would come to the realization, as most have, that adaptation is a necessity for survival. It's the only way to vitality and prosperity. Therefore, the adoption of the Common Core is the path to such for our nation, and most importantly, the American children, despite how the opposition may attempt to mislead you.
I'll wait for you guys. Are we good? Okay. Ever since the early 19th century, public school has been present in America. The United States government has struggled for many years on how to regulate the public school system. For many years, the federal government did not regulate public school, and states could decide on how to run the education. Recently, the federal government decided to add more regulations on public education. These regulations eventually led to the Common Core system. Common Core seems very ostentatious as a solution to the gap in the level of education nationally. But this is hardly the case. Common Core is unreasonable because it implements different policies and changes the way students learn to do something for the past 14 years. The implementation of Common Core is unjust to the students, teachers, and parents of the United States.
Bear with me, my voice is still a little bit gone. It has been clearly shown that when a person creates good habits early in life, those habits stick with them. The Common Core aims to do this with studying habits and school habits. Common Core is difficult. Some may even call it insipid, but time management skills that students have to learn to deal with the workload will better prepare them for college and jobs. Common Core teaching standards require a higher level of thinking and writing skills, creating the hindrance on Common Core, and will benefit students in their lives beyond high school. One of the main reasons the Common Core was implemented was to better prepare students for the rigorous nature of college work. In In college, the majority of work is done outside of a classroom without a professor. Students cannot afford to be indolent because they will not be very successful in college. The same goes for jobs after education. Much of the work is done without any direct supervision or any supervision at all, depending on the job. The rigor of the Common Core standards helps to create habits that will help students beyond their formal education.
Well, the Common Core doesn't actually help us with our jobs in the future. It just basically gives us harder reading passages and makes things more difficult to comprehend, which won't be how jobs are. If you talk to any of the teachers, that's not what their jobs are like. If you talk to chefs and doctors and lawyers, it's not what their jobs are.
Yeah, the Common Core strictly says that it's preparing people for STEM jobs, which if not the majority of people will not go into those fields. It's not necessarily preparing you for your college or your future career.
Yeah, are you gonna have to do part of the rebuttal?
No, I'm
Okay.
The other side doesn't get to talk, but they rebuttal.
Yeah.
After the rebuttal, though, then you guys, don't you go back to the? She has,
That's the rebuttal.
They do their, and then we
so what she has on here is point one, rebuttal, point
What
one.
was that?
No, it goes down. So.
Oh,
they
I'm
present their
sorry.
rebuttal.
And then the conduct,
And then we
I got it, sorry. Or, so wait,
Now
this
we
side
do
done,
that.
now you're going to point two? Yes? Yeah, okay.
No, they said they're
This is our point.
The con,
Yeah, we did our first point, now
I
it's
got
their
it.
first point.
yeah, okay, sorry.
It's kind of confusing.
I'm not this is not my wheelhouse, so.
Are you guys ready?
Just do it somewhere.
The new Common Core system has florid and competitive testing and grading styles. This doesn't only stress out the students, but it also stresses the teachers. According to Document C, first of all, the pressure placed on students, teachers, and school administrators will be greater than ever. For the first time in educational history, states will be able to accurately compare their students' achievements to students in neighboring states. This factor alone will cause the pressure of high-stakes testing to go through the roof. And although we can compare testing scores, the tests won't be accurate because anxiety is shown to decrease testing scores. And so this brings me to question, how will more anxiety increase testing scores? This will simply cause torpor among the students, lowering their motivation to get work done. Common Core is also sending many teachers into a frenzy. Document D says they could end up losing their jobs if they do not perform adequately. A teacher's job shouldn't rely on their students' ability or motivation to learn the material presented to them. Students spend hours listlessly preparing for tests only to forget the material right after the test due to these high-stakes testing. And studies show that higher pressure on tests result in lower testing scores. So I'll leave you with the question, why put more pressure on testing when students will learn less and will be riddled with anxiety and idolency? Sorry.
So, first of all, Common Core increases rigor throughout the year, and they have progression checks to see how students are progressing throughout the year. So it's not just one really, really high stakes test at the end of the year. They build on their skills all year, and they're better prepared to deal with standardized tests because that's what they've been prepared for in a rigorous manner.
And in addition, you're arguing that because Common Core is stressful for some people, that we should be having students adopt this, but this is a false equivalence. Just because some students are getting stressed doesn't mean that we need to scrap our new standards. So basically, because our students are falling behind, like, we need to instead be trying to alleviate their stress, and by having yearly updates and progression, we can figure out the best way to alleviate it rather than just getting rid of our entire new system.
Furthermore, it kind of gives the impression that the argument is that it's too hard, so we shouldn't do it, which isn't really a good reasoning behind not doing something.
Well,
Oh, sorry. My bad.
That's good. Common Core will eliminate the variability of education from state to state, leveling the playing field for students nationally. Currently, the disparity in both content and quality of education from state to state is immense. Common Core, a national standard, will eliminate this disparity. Students will no longer have to worry about moving to another state and starting an entirely new curriculum. In addition to this fact, it forces high-performing students to work harder as well, and not just skate by as they so often do in mediocre high school curriculums. Cheryl Mosier, our science teacher, argues, with the Common Core, we're not going to have pockets of really high-performing kids in one area compared to another area where kids aren't working on the same level. She says everybody is going to have a high bar to meet, but it's a bar that can be met with support from and for all teachers, from Source G. Not only does this level the playing field for students in each state, but it encourages an alliance between teachers across the country, sharing tips and information on how to teach each lesson the best way they can. As Massachusetts high school teacher Peter Milley says, the key word to focus on is common. He believes that there is far too much academic variability from state to state and not enough collaboration. The good things that may be happening in Alabama can be shared and found useful to educators in Arizona because they are working on the same topics, he says. Common Core allows for teachers across the country to collaborate on the lessons, from Source G as well. A national standard for education would eliminate the variable and florid system, or lack thereof, of education across the country, benefiting all students.
You got this?
I did. So you guys are arguing that Common Core is a national standard. However, not all states participate in this Common Core. There are only 45 states out of the 50 that actually participate in Common Core. Also, every state's Common Core standards can be different. They don't all have to be a national curriculum. It's not a national curriculum, it's based on states. They're all follow the same outline, but they're not the same curriculum. As well as many states are also trying to pull out of this Common Core.
Also, although the Common Core is bringing the lower students up, it's also bringing the top students down and grouping every child in the same category, which we're not all the same. Some belong in a higher category while others belong in a lower category. And I had nothing else to say. I forgot what to say.
In addition, private schools have the ability to opt out of Common Core, so it's not equal with the public school system.
Also, it removes like creative thinkers. Like if everybody's teaching everything the same way, then you won't have anybody like thinking differently.
And it really restricts the way teachers can teach. They have to teach the way the state wants them to teach, and that means they can't teach in the way that their students are going to learn best. They can't alter their lessons so that their students, who they have grown to know over the whole school year, will learn the best.
You guys want to learn? Number 124. Well, actually, 124.
You guys good? Alright. So with this new Common Core curriculum, teachers have a lack of understanding of what they're really teaching. And it's not their own fault either. It's the fault of this new Common Core, as lessons are being released to them by their states to the teachers during the school year. So they can't go ahead or make a learning lesson plan based on their students, and they have to be where the state wants them to be. The Common Core strips the alliance between the teachers and their lesson plans, by forcing them to teach students a certain way. Common Core is also leading to much disparity to teachers whose students do not perform well on tests. According to Document E, teachers going through the rigor of trying to teach the students can be good young teachers to burn out and leave the field and fire other teachers whose students may love. They might fire teachers who the students love, but their test scores might not be high enough, and they can get fired due to the Common Core standards. Teachers whose grades aren't high enough sometimes are put on probation and can be fired after 3 years, even if they have been here. Teachers are becoming alienated from their curriculum, as well as being able to teach less units in a year. Teachers are forced to teach things a certain way, and they don't have time to cover all the units that they usually could have. Common Core Math will not prepare kids in STEM fields as well as it claims to do so. Teachers are also required to gather a massive amount of information and statistics on their students. This goes without saying, but the Common Core isn't just greatly affecting the students, it's affecting the people trying to prepare the students for their future and restraining them from doing their job. Thank you.
Okay, actually your point about removing creativity from the classroom and teaching less topics is false, because removing topics from the year allows for more time to be spent on the other units, or whatever you want to call them. So it allows for a deeper understanding of each topic, so teachers can focus on it. And a teacher actually said that it allows for him to bring fun, creative activities back to the classroom to further his understanding. And so it's actually completely false. It allows for teachers to kind of take over their teaching methods more because they have more time to do things that they love.
Teacher Peter really said that.
And in addition, your argument is contradictory with your earlier arguments. Before you were saying that Common Core does not completely set a rigorous standard, and however it's left largely as a minimum bar for the states to still decide. So you're suggesting that the federal government has complete control over the education system, while before your group was arguing that it'll still allow states to have some autonomy. So you can't really say that the federal government is completely like overriding the inputs of the teachers when it's still left up mostly to the states. So there's a lot of rhetoric coming from the right side of the room that Common Core is suppressing standards and stifling our students' ability to learn. But this is purely a rhetorical narrative. Common Core is truly beneficial to all American students because it once again allows American students to compete with the rest of the world. Nations like China, Japan, South Korea, Finland, their students are lapping us in their performance and grades. Common Core is simply creating a universal standard for all across the nation that allows our students to match our academic rivals in Europe and Asia and beyond. Before, we had students in states like West Virginia who had no hopes of matching even students in rich states like Connecticut and Massachusetts, much less Japan or China. Common Core benefits all students by creating a national standards which equips students universally with the critical thinking and analysis skills that can allow our students to compete once more with the rest of the world. And it is true that some students are having a hard time adjusting to the new standards. Nobody's denying that. Even I struggle with math sometimes. But in the long run, if students want to advance, anybody with the drive and discipline has the ability to adopt the new standards. In the past few decades, we've started to fall behind. Nowadays, the world doesn't look to America anymore as the shining example of education. But by implementing Common Core standards, our students can once again compete with the rest of the world.
So in other countries, they actually only educate the top 10% of their students, and the other students they send into occupational education, so they can prepare to be a janitor or whatever they're going to be. Whereas we educate our students, all of them, we educate every child, so we're going to have lower overall testing grades. So we're trying to compare all of our 100% of the people in our country to the top 10 in theirs. So how are we trying to bring up, we're trying to bring up the bottom students to the top 10 in other countries, which is, it's not gonna work. It doesn't work that way.
Also, you talked about the national standard, but if states can deviate from Common Core, then how's that a national standard?
Sorry, I don't think that's supposed to be around, but Caitlin, where are you getting the 10% back?
Miss
DePaul
Borelli.
actually has 4 and 5 level classes, and they are the classes
That's
that are
one country, not all countries.
And
Miss
China,
Borelli was
and
talking about
Taiwan.
this yesterday.
I'm getting confused here.
They're not supposed to be speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry, but that was just
Japan,
like.
I'm just
China,
curious because we didn't
Finland.
know where you got that
Yeah.
source from.
Katie wasn't here when Mrs. Borelli was.
Oh, okay.
So, okay,
You guys need
so
more time for this rebuttal? Okay.
if you read one of the documents, it specifically says that Common Core will probably take about 15 years for students to get used to. So how is that beneficial for that 15 years of students who will be unprepared for college?
And they're gonna be, it's gonna be like, the whole next generation of students is going to be unprepared to help their children learn.
Especially because states want to get away from it now too, like Washington DC is making a push to get rid of it. That by the time those 15 years come to like get everybody implemented the new Common Core, we'll be starting something.
That's Washington.
Yeah, you guys are way over, so. Stop.
The ones that
I lost. The courtroom.
You good?
Yes.
Ready? Alright, great. So, Common Core as an education system is a harsh overbearing of the government's sphere of influence in America's schooling systems. Such a poignant grip on the learning of a country's youth is a characteristic highly common in countries we as a nation have opposed in the past. Namely totalitarian communist countries. In his book, Hitler once said, "Whoever has the youth has the future." In his vision for the Nazi Party, education would be the key that ensured that he had the youth of Germany fully indoctrinated. In fact, all dictators and authoritarian regimes know that what is taught in their schools offers the most opulent opportunity to maintain control of their societies. You will find no reference, no mention of education in the U.S. Constitution, since the Founding Fathers felt it should not be a function of the federal government. Yet, the Department of Education was established by President Jimmy Carter, who signed it into law in 1979. Control over the education of the country's youth gives an unprecedented and dangerous amount of power to the government, politicians deciding what children should be taught. There's a reason that the Founding Fathers didn't believe that schooling should be bound to the federal government. They knew that politicians often don't know the first thing about schooling. However, such a strong desire to control what the youth learn could be traced back to the Nazi regime, in which Hitler regulated and censored the information being taught to children in an effort to control their perceptions of his actions as a dictator. Since we as students are often advised to remember our mistakes so that history doesn't repeat itself, it's only logical to consider Common Core a cautionary tale of foreshadowing in the American schooling system.
Well, I would say that I did say that was going to happen, and it did. And also, totalitarian communism was brought up, and then Hitler was talked about. And Hitler wasn't a communist. He hated communists. He was fighting Joseph Stalin. Also, on top of it, is that, as far as I'm aware, Jimmy Carter isn't like applicable to being a Nazi, because like the creation of a Department of Education is a necessity for democracy, and it doesn't necessarily make you a totalitarian regime. And therefore, I would bring that into question.
In addition, I would just want to take this moment to just think about how beneficial it is that we do not live in a totalitarian, fascist/communist state, and in fact live in a democracy. And none of our students are being taught to be servile to a totalitarian state. And can't argue that the federal government is completely controlling our students' lives. I mean, before Common Core, it wasn't like we had like New York State students goose-stepping, shouting "Hail Cuomo" or anything like that. So you can't just argue that it's completely great to
To
our
bring up
students.
Joe's
Sorry for
point-
embellishing.
No, bring up Joe's point from before, you guys in your rebuttals keep saying like, there's, the states and like schools have an option to, they're trying to like get out of Common Core, yet you're saying that the government is like controlling, the states with the Common Core, so it's like you're contradicting yourself and stuff, so.
Yeah, you're way over.
I thought our time for the rebuttals was supposed to be like about 5 minutes or something.
No.
He has 1 minute.
Oh.
Intro and conclusions are 5 minutes.
You were close.
No.
If you guys go over, we'll turn it back.
We've all done, all of us are, yeah.
Oh, we won't.
It's okay, our conclusions weren't 5 minutes, our intros weren't 5 minutes.
Exactly.
It's all good.
Left us time for the
Yeah.
What point is this?
We'll go with
Point
that.
4?
Yeah,
Together.
Like nervous. Okay, are you guys ready? Okay. Among the abounding benefits of Common Core, there is one that stands out especially to me personally. It forces students to actually understand what they're learning and doing. I'm sure many of you, as well as myself, can attest to the fact that we, as students, learn the minimal amount in order to get by. We memorize facts, formulas, procedures, etc., but rarely do we understand the meaning behind what we're doing. However, when you actually understand the meaning of what you're doing, you are typically able to better memorize and comprehend content through semantic encoding, or encoding by meaning. Common Core allows for more time to be spent on each topic, so students can take time to better understand the topic. As elementary school teacher Davis Caldwell points out, I've been faced with the challenge of having to teach roughly 100 math topics over the course of a single year. The Common Core takes a smorgasbord of topics and removes things from the plate, allowing me to focus on key topics we know will form a clear and consistent foundation for students. Source G. In combination with added time, Common Core allows for teachers to bring fun, creative activities back to the classroom to further kids' understanding. Teacher Peter Milley says, the Common Core streamlines content, and with less to cover, I am able to enrich the experience, which gives my students a greater understanding. Also Source G. Source G was really good. The Common Core allows for students to attain a better, fuller understanding of what they're doing. Semantic encoding, or encoding memories by meaning, is the most effective means of memorization, and Common Core encourages this, which would be a definite benefit to all students.
So Common Core, a lot of the time, it actually makes us relearn material from previous years. As you yourselves, students, have probably experienced this in your math classes. You've learned 7th grade material all over again, a completely different way how to do it, and it doesn't make any sense. Overall, it's confusing. And it doesn't give you a deeper understanding, it gives you less understanding, because the way you did it before worked. It doesn't work now.
Alright, and also you said that Common Core puts a lot more like focus on the learning, but Common Core, as you said earlier, was created for much more competitive grades like worldwide. And you gotta like pick a side there. You can't be on both ends of that.
Also, teachers don't get their modules in time to prepare for those activities. So I know a bunch of the math teachers, they didn't get their first module until August, before the school year started.
You also said that this national standard, the federal government isn't trying to interfere in letting the teachers decide what they teach and their lesson plans. However, the modules they give out have actual like scripts in them from the government of what they have to say to their students when they teach these lessons. They have actual things they have to say.
Testing has always been a vital part of the school system. It provides a basis by which faculty and students can determine how much a student knows. Although tracking a student's progress is important, Common Core prioritizes test results over a student's learning. Common Core has placed the entirety of a student's worth on a simple statistic. This is completely contradictory to how the world works, considering a person is made up of personality, motivation, creativity, and passion. Simply put, the standardized system relies too heavily on test grades, which indicate nothing other than the amount students can shove into their brains before an exam. The end result creates nothing more than servile, uninterested students who are incapable of critically thinking. In addition, the new Common Core program lacks the resources and efforts in aiding students with special needs. The constant addition of new classroom material suppresses a disabled student's ability and motivation to learn. According to Source D, current accountability systems allow for different testing instruments to be used for students with special needs. Common Core state standards does not have such an assessment. So I ask, is it morally right to allow insipid, naive government officials to dictate every aspect of a school's curriculum, considering everyone is an individual and everyone learns in a unique way?
Well, sorry. The biggest point they made is actually completely untrue. So you said that it relies too much on test scores. It actually does quite the opposite. So yes, it doesn't rely on test scores. It just look to them because it's just the easiest way to get data sometimes. But the main effort of the Common Core has gone into moving away from getting students just to memorize something for a test and then forget. Like they want to teach you a way to learn where you can retain the information, not just like shove it, like you said, shove it into your brain before a test. So it isn't like its main focus is to go away from what you think it's actually doing. And so its implementation has been the opposite of what has happened.
It seems like you guys are trying to argue against standardization, which has been practiced for quite some time, and Common Core is just an adaptation that's trying to move away from the errors found in that. And yeah, that's all. Yep. Did we go for that?
Like 3 seconds.
Oh.
Let's just go over all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so,
No, we're gonna
So
do
rebuttal.
And then make the last two like no rebuttal.
No rebuttal. And then just save it all for the rebuttal last.
I thought it was rebuttal.
Told me
not to do that.
Come on, give her a little best. We need them a little best.
Why do you think she's saying?
I don't know, we always, are you?
We had time last time.
Yeah, last time we did it.
She told me she wanted me to give you time to prepare your conclusion. Do you usually have that too?
Yeah.
We don't.
We don't need that.
Yeah.
We want a rebuttal fast.
Yeah.
I'll say I was overruled.
Oh, actually, Claire is the conclusion editor.
Okay, let's do it.
I won't cry, I promise. You don't want to.
Okay, are you guys ready? According to source I,